I'm Sammi Cohen, and this is Social Currency, a podcast that unpacks the stories that are shaping business, culture, and the intersection of the two. I am so excited for today's episode, but just a fair warning, this is going to be a different kind of episode from my normal solo episodes because normally we're doing deep dives into businesses, talking about the hottest business lore. But for this episode, we are doing a solo deep dive onto me, myself, and I. It's a case study, if you will. If you're listening to this podcast, you have probably seen my videos on Instagram or TikTok, and you have followed me into the podcast realm, which is amazing. But so many of you have told me that you have followed me for my business takes and content, but you really don't know much about me. And the purpose of this episode is to finally reveal more about myself, so I'm not this secret talking head and person in your ear that you know nothing about. I'm actually really nervous for this episode because I've never done this before. This is brand new to me. I am so comfortable sharing content that is beyond myself, and I've never really shared what is going on with me and the reason why I'm here and why this podcast exists, and there's a lot to uncover. For this episode, I also want the arc to be about how you know when it's the right time to take this entrepreneurial leap. Because a lot of you who listen to my videos, who send me comments or DMs, have asked me, how do you know when it is the right time? How do you even know when you should start or how you should start a side hustle or business? And there's so much to think about. How do you even go after what you want to go after? I want to share my personal experiences because number one, I hope it resonates and I hope you hear my story and there's something in it that you can relate to. But number two, I also want you to see that my story is far from linear. I have worked in so many different companies. And if you were to see them all on paper, it kind of seems random. And the types of roles that I've had are also all over the place. But I actually believe that my non-linear career is actually my superpower. The reason for this is because each of the experiences in my life have literally given me the unique skill sets that I've needed to form my unique perspective and share the stories that I have to share. So I see my non-linearity as a superpower, and maybe by the end of the episode, you will too. I wouldn't change a thing, and I just want to get into it because there is so much to cover. Let's start from the beginning. I am a born and raised New Yorker. I grew up in Westchester County. I've been told ever since I have lived in California that I give off major New York energy. So if you've wondered if I'm from New York or if I have New York ties, I very much do. I still have a lot of family in New York. And I went to USC, University of Southern California, for school. I majored in communications and minored in entrepreneurship. And I really thought when I went to USC that I wanted to work in entertainment. I have always been fascinated by business. My entire life, even as a little kid, I remember I would want to hear the stories of the people leading the businesses just as much as I would want, the next product that all of my friends had. For me, the stories of the people leading the business or even the story of how the business came to be was almost just as cool as the product itself. And I felt like entertainment was really exciting to me. I had no idea what working in that industry was like, but for me, it was always something that I aspired to. That all changed, however, when after my sophomore year at USC, I decided to intern for Voltage Pictures. I actually don't even know if they're still around today, but it's a film production company. And I realized very early on that I absolutely hated it for a few reasons. One, I realized that I would have no agency, especially as a lower level, entry level person into the entertainment industry. It's a kind of industry where you need to work for a really long time to build your way up. And quite frankly, I just don't think I ever had the patience for it. And I remember hearing on one of my first days of the internship that a script that the team was looking at was likely not going to be turned into a movie that was released until years and years later. And at the time when I had that internship, it was probably around 2012. Instagram was starting to become really big. And I just had a feeling that with social media and the way that entertainment was changing at the time, that I was going to find something that was fast paced that I would like more. But anyway, I quickly realized traditional entertainment was not going to be my path. And I went back to the drawing board after that summer, and this is going into my junior year. And I realized, okay, I've always been fascinated with business. How do I work in a vertical of business that excites me and that will give me a foundation to figure it out later on in my career? And I think this is a common theme if I look back on the decisions that I've made career-wise. I've never viewed things as a one-way door. I've always viewed different options that I've made or decisions that I've made in my career as truly reversible, or if they're not reversible, I can choose another path at a later point. That's helped to keep me really open-minded because I know that nothing is permanent. Anyway, that theme will come up a bunch as I talk about the rest of my career, but I decided that I wanted to go into a food management training program. So there are these big conglomerates in the US, the Mondelez and the Crafts of the world, who have these types of programs. I actually ended up at Aldi, and if you're not familiar with Aldi, most of you probably are, but it's a big German grocery chain. And this is probably embarrassing, but I hadn't heard of Aldi when I actually applied for the role. I grew up in New York. There weren't any Aldi locations that were right around my house. And at that point, when I was living in LA for school at USC, there were no Aldi locations there because they hadn't expanded to the West Coast. So this role was a management training program role, and I was relocated to Chicago. The Aldi management training program is super intense. Some of you have probably also heard about this one because it's kind of notorious for being a really wild program. They put you into the stores as a entry-level employee. So you're on the cashier, you are stocking the shelves, you're starting your shifts at 5 a.m. And really, they want to teach you every single operational element of working in a store. So that way, as you build your way up and you're eventually leading multiple stores, you know every step of the way and what it takes to run a successful store. So the store that they put me in was in the south side of Chicago. I was in at 5 a.m. I have these crazy memories, like so many memories that I will have to talk about at a later point because we frankly don't have time in this episode. But just one as an example, I just remember I get to a store at 5 a.m. because I was in the opening shift. I had worked my way up to a shift manager at the time, and something happened where the alarm tripped and I'm there outside of the store by myself. It's 5 a.m. It's south side of Chicago. The fire alarm is going. And then of course, all these police cars come racing up and I'm crying. Sorry, a little bit of a traumatic Sammi moment for you guys. But anyway, it was the real deal. And it was an experience that taught me every step of the way at these stores. And so at the end of the training program, you get to be a district manager, which means that you oversee a variety of stores. And at that point, I helped to come out to Southern California and expand Aldi to the West Coast. And all in all, I was at Aldi for 4 years, but I knew towards the end of my time there that I wanted to actually get my MBA. An MBA was something I always wanted, and I don't know where this idea initially came to be, but it was always something that I aspired for. I think I am very lucky in that I had two parents who fully appreciated the significance of having a good education. And I was always empowered if I wanted to go to get additional years of schooling. They were always cheering me on. And I felt like for me, the natural next step was to get my MBA. So I took the GMAT 5 times, okay? If that doesn't tell you something about my personality, I don't know what will. I took it 5 times because I wanted to get the best possible score that I could get to get into the best possible school that I could get into. And so after the whole GMAT saga was over, I actually ended up getting into the Haas School of Business, which is Berkeley's business school. And I knew that before I went to business school, I wanted to run with some kind of entrepreneurial idea. I'd been working in the food industry at Aldi. I'd seen all of these new products hit the shelves, and Aldi, if you don't know much about it, it's similar to Trader Joe's in that its vast majority of the products are private label. And there was something that I just loved about hearing through the Aldi buyers about the process of creating the new products. And I had known while I was at Aldi that I was always interested in creating my own food product. So by the time I had gotten into Berkeley, I figured, okay, I'm in a full-time 2-year program. This is my time. If not now, when? So I went into Berkeley with the idea to start this company. And when I was at Berkeley, I ended up finding a food scientist. I tracked down the suppliers for the raw materials and the bottles, and I came up with this idea for a refrigerated matcha latte. Mind you, I had worked in the food industry, but I didn't know the P&L of these food companies or beverage companies. I didn't really know the costs associated. So I was incredibly naive. I was truly creating this company as more of this pipe dream of something that I've always wanted to do. And my first year in business school, I had gotten this prototype of the product. And at the time, the company was called Mother Matcha. There was this big pitch competition called BevNet. And if you're in the beverage industry, you know who BevNet is. It's a big deal for the beverage people. And they have this pitch competition. They pick 12 companies that are newer beverage brands. Of course, you do a pitch. And then at the end of it, there is a winner, and it's just great PR for your company. So I had literally created samples of my product. I wasn't sold anywhere. I had zero distribution, and I decided to enter myself into the pitch competition. And lo and behold, by some miracle, I get chosen. I go down to LA, where the pitch competition was, and it was a really fun weekend, but I ultimately didn't end up winning the final pitch competition. But what I realized was that I was so over my head in creating this company. And I remember talking to other founders, and they were saying, oh, what are your COGS like, your cost of goods sold, and what retailers are you in? And I just looked at them and just said, I don't know, I'm figuring it out, because I truly was. And I don't think anyone there truly knew the extent of unpreparedness that I was at. So I end up leaving that weekend. Of course, I didn't win, but it was a huge relief that I didn't win too, because I had so much to figure out. As soon as that was over, I started going into the actual cost of what it would take to grow and scale this company. And because it was a refrigerated product, that means that you need cold chain logistics and storage, and it just adds so much in terms of your cost. And I knew that there was no world in which I could create that type of product, especially given my budget. And I was bootstrapping it with money that I'd saved up from my time at Aldi. I had this moment where I really thought about raising friends and family capital for the business, but I then realized the only way I would take that capital is if I wasn't a full-time student. So it was very clear that running the company was my sole focus. And it was at that point where I realized I wasn't willing to take that leap, or there must have been a subconscious part of me that was either scared or knew it was going to be very hard based on just the pure economics. And I decided to not pursue that company. So I went back to the drawing board, and I was still really excited about this whole entrepreneurial food idea. And I decided to take the same concept of matcha, but instead of creating a refrigerated product, I decided that I was going to create a shelf-stable concentrate. And the fact that it was shelf-stable meant that I didn't need to pay for any of the refrigeration, which is great. The idea for it was it would be sold to fast casual restaurants or offices where they didn't want to take the time to actually whisk the matcha and have it be this longer process. It was pretty much this industrial sized bottle that I had created with the matcha concentrate, and baristas would be able to pour it and then mix it with milk, and ta-da, you have a matcha latte. I continued working with the food scientist on this. I was able to find a manufacturer. I actually was able to create my first commercially viable matcha concentrate. And at that point, I had actually pivoted the business. So it was called Tanner's Tea. Tanner's Tea was pretty exciting in that it was the first physical product that I had created that I had sold to customers. I had real revenue. I remember getting my first cafe to say yes. And to me, it was the most exhilarating feeling in the world to feel like you are creating a product that people are paying money for. And I will never forget that feeling. I continued to grow the company throughout the next year of school. And at the end of that time, in March 2020, because I was graduating in May, the happened, the pandemic, of course. And I went from getting thousands of dollars in monthly revenue from all of my customers in the Bay Area to literally zero. And we had no idea. Everyone listening to this remembers, we didn't know how long the pandemic would last. We didn't know how it would impact business longer term. And I was sitting there. I was a few months away from graduating from Haas, and I realized I need to get a job because who knows? I am graduating with this very expensive degree and I need money coming in. Once again, I went back to the drawing board and I thought, okay, I'm going to run the matcha concentrate business as a side business. But in terms of full time, where can I work where there's this combination of tech, because I've always been interested in tech, retail, and operations, because retail and operations were really my background. And to this day, there's no better company than Amazon for those things. So I applied to Amazon. I ended up getting recruited in their logistics division for last mile. I really jumped in full steam ahead. Working in logistics in the beginning of the pandemic was no joke. It was 12-hour days pretty consistently. And I really felt as if I was drinking from a fire hose. And I learned so much in that first year. But towards the end of even my first year there, I started to feel so drained creatively. My job itself was super analytical, very operations focused too. And I was really thinking of how I could create some form of joy for myself in terms of creating something that was creative. I ended up thinking about posting on TikTok in a funny way. I was talking to a friend about how obsessed I was with business podcasts. Of course, at the time, I think I was really into how I built the podcast. And my friend told me, she's like, why don't you just start talking about this? If you're feeling so creatively drained, why don't you just like put up a TikTok or something? And I laughed at the time thinking like, haha, me on TikTok? Yeah, right. That comment stuck with me. And even the next day, I was still thinking about it. And a few days later, I realized why not? Especially with TikTok, you put a video up, it goes out into the ether. It's not like it's going to your immediate friends and family right away. And so I realized if I put something out there and it doesn't do well, no one will see it. So no harm, no foul. And my first video, of course, I'll never forget it. It was March 2022. And I created a video that talked about Sophia Amoruso, the founder of Nasty Gal. I was so nervous to put up the video. And after I put it up, I think it got something like 100 views. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. I'm so excited about this. This is the combination of my love of business and getting to do something creatively and entertaining. And I just started doubling down. And so over the next few days, I started just creating more videos. And they were mostly in the business space, but also had a pop culture spin. After 2 weeks, I created a video on Tracy Romulus, who is high up in Kim Kardashian's network of companies. I believe at one point she was CMO. And I go to sleep that night. The next morning I wake up and this video has hundreds of thousands of views. I think now today it's probably 2.5 million, I would guess. I realize that there is this really unique element where people loved hearing about business and culture. And that truly was when I decided to really take it seriously. And it wasn't linear by any means. As I said, I started in 2022. So my social media journey, even though it started in business, I started realizing that the videos that we were doing really well were actually more pop culture focused. So I was putting out videos that were like the career of Selena Gomez, which no shame on Selena. I love Selena, but now my content is obviously a lot more business focused. And I kind of realized that when you're creating a video about a celebrity, if you have a celebrity on a green screen behind you, people are going to watch the video because they're interested in the celebrity, not because of your narrative or the way you're telling the story. It's because they're obsessed with the celebrity and they are going to like it to, support the celebrity that you're talking about. And I realized that, yes, those types of videos get the clicks, but you don't build a loyal following from them. After that, I was a little bit of a hot mess, honestly, when it came to my content. I was posting all sorts of stuff, even before my wedding. I got married in January 2024. I'd say the 6 months before my wedding, I was just posting wedding content of best wedding venues in the US and where to find your vendor for X, Y, or Z. And I knew at the time that I was doing it because I was really interested in those topics, because they were obviously very relevant in my life preparing for a wedding. But I also knew deep down that the second that my wedding was over, I was not going to want to touch that content or ever talk about it again. I was never going to become Sammi Cohen, the wedding influencer. It just wasn't me. I realized after my wedding, once I had done this hot mess hodgepodge of all these different topics, that what I was really the most passionate about was dissecting businesses. That was something where, to me, it was that perfect mix of putting out content that I enjoyed, that I found educational and entertaining. I realized that this was kind of my ikigai. If you're familiar with that framework, it's this confluence of your passion, mission, profession, and vocation. And for me, I realized that since my videos were starting to get a little bit of traction around this time, especially some of the business videos, that this was something I wanted to go from hobby, side hustle that I'm doing before and after work to really jumping in and doing it full time. I continued to do that for the first 6 months of 2024. And then in July of 2024 is when everything changed. So a friend of mine had sent me a tweet or X post, whatever we're calling it, about the rise and fall of outdoor voices. And at the time, they had just been acquired by Consortium Brand Partners, the PE firm that bought them. And I thought, okay, this would be a great video topic. So I spin a video up about it and I go to sleep that night. And the next day I wake up to thousands of shares, of likes, of comments. And I had this full body yes moment where I realized this is the type of content I am going to double down on. And so if you're listening to this episode, the first episode, which came out a few days before this, was the Ty Haney interview. And this was such a full circle moment for me where, not to sound too woo-woo, but I really felt as if this could have been a manifestation of the work that I've been doing for the better part of a year, because really it was her video that completely changed the course of the trajectory of my channel and of my entire career. So I think the world of Ty. I am really honored that she came onto the podcast, and I feel as if that moment of her coming on really meant so much more to me and had so much significance than someone who may not know the backstory. So I thought that was pretty important to share. After that Ty Haney Outdoor Voices video, I doubled down. I did the rise and fall of Casper and Allbirds and all of these direct-to-consumer companies. And I was hustling because all this time, I'm still working at Amazon, which is very demanding. I'm working at 5:30 in the morning to get videos done or concept videos before I go to work. And then in between meetings, I'm working on videos. And then after work, of course, I'm also doing all of this video stuff. So I really, really worked my ass off. And I felt as if I also needed to say that because so much on social media, I would imagine, if you're not in the space, can probably feel like they just, come up with videos on their free time. But especially with the level of research that I do in my videos, I was really putting 110% of my energy into making this channel or putting this channel in the best possible likelihood that it would be successful or catch on, or I would be able to create some kind of community around it. I kept going because I genuinely loved it. And I feel as if I've discovered my mission, which is to create content that exists at this intersection of educational and entertaining. And so much of the content that I have consumed, if it's educational, it's honestly boring or feels like if I listen to it, I'm just going to lose interest and then be ADD and go on my phone. Or if it's entertaining, a lot of entertaining content is just brain rot and you feel like you're not really getting anything on the other side of it, which then kind of makes me feel bad. So my goal is to create content for you guys that feels like you're learning something, but you're learning something in a way that is really engaging and that makes you want to continue to listen to my videos. I felt as if after that Ty Haney video, after that series where I talked about all of these direct-to-consumer companies, I felt this momentum change. I was crystal clear on my mission. I could tell that things were changing when the level of brands that were reaching out to me were just a higher caliber. I was getting a higher rate per video to work with these brands. And I had so many of you all reaching out to me via DM or email and saying, I just discovered your page. I love it and I want to hear more. Or can you cover X, Y, or Z story? I'd love to hear your take on it. So I really felt like things were changing when I just started getting a lot more influx of inbound messages. And I'd say my biggest wow moment so far, and this is going to sound ridiculous to so many of you, but if you're a stan, you will know. So about 6 months ago, I woke up and when I went on my phone, I saw, usually if someone verified follows you on Instagram, it'll be one of the first things that you see, or at least that's how my Instagram settings are set up. And so I saw that Mindy Kaling followed me and I lost my mind. That was a moment for me where I've just been such a fangirl of hers for a while, and I felt truly honored that she decided to follow me and like my content. So Mindy, if you're listening to this or watching this, hey girl. So back to the why. I feel so strongly that this gap of filling this educational and entertaining space is so necessary right now. I think we're at this point where Instagram Reels are huge, YouTube's obviously huge, TikTok, and I feel as if there's this massive opportunity to really be able to create content in this space and create this larger community around it. As I said earlier, I think my nonlinear experience and the situations that I've been in, from my time as a product manager at Amazon to working at Aldi in operations to being in a matcha company in business and an entrepreneur, and also just a woman in my 30s living in Los Angeles, I have my own unique experiences that I just love sharing with the world. And I feel as if we've created this really special community that I'm so excited to keep growing. So where am I at today? So as of this taping, I am actually still employed by my full-time employer. But when this goes live, I will be taking that transition to doing this full-time, growing the podcast, obviously keeping up with my social content, and then building my company, Social Currency, out to something much larger than it is today. And I am so excited about it. So I really want the takeaways for this episode to be about when you know it's the right time for you to make that leap. And in summation of my own experiences, I felt as if I really gained the confidence to make that move once I had had enough time dabbling in it and growing my skill set. I would not be in the position where I am at today if I had gone fully into social media when I was just starting. For me, I really enjoyed having the ability to grow my confidence while I was still getting a full-time paycheck from Amazon. So that way I felt as if I could create content that I really enjoyed, and I didn't come at it from this sense of a scarcity mindset, because I really believe that the mindset that you have when you take on any entrepreneurial venture is incredibly important, and you need to come from a space of feeling enoughness, if you will. And for me, the enoughness came from when I knew that I wasn't dependent on my content creation for my full-time income to support myself and my family. And so that's my advice. I know people have all sorts of thoughts on whether or not you should just jump 2 feet in and you'll figure it out, or if you should be more calculated about it. For me personally, I think being calculated, at least in the first few months of it, minimum, is really helpful to create this roadmap and plan, and also just to get better at what you're doing. It also, lastly, it enabled me to save up money for the studio. So this is technically my third studio. The first one burned down in the LA fires. The second one I was filming at Spotify, and they randomly shut down all of their Spotify studios. And finally, after that happened, I realized I'm just going to create my own studio. Now is the time. Truly, there's no better time. And if I don't do it now, I won't do it. So that's why we're in this beautiful space. And if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen all of the setup and the behind the scenes on that. But I hope you enjoyed this Sammi Cohen deep dive. And I'll be featuring more of these takes as the podcast goes on. So I'll be giving more of my personal perspectives and stories as we go, especially when it comes to career and business stuff. And I really want to share this business and podcast building journey with you guys. If you're listening to this right now, this means that you are part of this social currency community, and I am so happy that you're here. The best is yet to come. We are just getting started, and I am so excited to do this with you. So thanks for listening, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Social Currency. I've been wanting to launch this show for so long. I can't tell you how excited I am to do this and how thrilled I am that you're actually here listening. It means the world to me. If you liked what you heard today, please rate and review the podcast because it massively helps to support the work I do to bring the show to life. And if you want to keep up with the hottest business lore in real time, follow me on Instagram at Sammi Cohen Talks and subscribe to my newsletter, Social Currency, which is linked in the show notes. Social Currency is a production of Social Currency Media and Money News Network. The podcast is hosted and executive produced by me, Sammi Cohen. Social Currency is produced by the Money News Network team. See you next time.